politics the role, but is there maybe a real opportunity to boost the rebuild with 3 picks in the second?
Hopefully. I can't say, ideally we'd hit on all of these prospects and have players that turn out for us, but there's no guarantee of that. If you look back through the history of drafts and the percentages of players playing for us, it's more difficult than it seems. So it sure speeds things up. The more players you can get out of each draft, it speeds up the process.
Do you feel it's a deep draft? There will be
I really do,
players
yeah.
that-
You know the big 2 up top, and they get a lot of attention, and they deserve it. But we're as excited. Maybe it's a different level of prospect, but we're as excited about the 35th pick, and don't know who that will be at this time, but we are excited. We do think there's a good group of players. Excited about every step of the way. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good young prospects in this draft.
Is there an area that you're focusing on, position group you're focusing on, Steve,
No.
or basically best player available, more those type of things?
Yeah, no, at this stage, and generally with every draft, you're just trying to find the best prospect, but at each position where we're not targeting a particular position.
You were in Plymouth a lot, watching that USA program a lot. I know this past season that group is loaded. What about those guys, especially a couple of centers, really makes them stand out to you?
It's just a talented group of players. They're good, skilled players. It's age groups produce different players. Just I don't know. It's just there's nothing to read into it, or you can figure out. Some years you'll get a good group of defensemen coming out. In other years you'll get one league will be stronger than the others, as it turns out in the U.S. It's not just the U.S. program, but the USHL as well has collectively this age group has a very talented group of players.
Is there something, sorry, just to follow up, is there something about that program, though, that you've seen in the last few years especially that really makes some of those guys stand out maybe a little bit more ready than other programs?
Well, theoretically, those are the best players in the United States, so therefore you have the best prospects. It's as simple as that. Any country would have a particular national team. You're getting their best players. So why you're seeing these great prospects? Because they're the best players in the United States for the most part.
Did you glean from the combine as far as interviews and such in making your decision, especially maybe for the...
Doesn't really change. Really doesn't change. I guess I would come out of those meetings. You spend 25 minutes with the kids. You go over their testing results. For me, it's just an opportunity to get to know them a little bit, spend a few minutes, make a first impression if you've never met them before, kind of size them up a little bit, very unscientifically trying to figure out, is he going to grow? Is he going to put on weight? Is he done growing? But mostly I just like to meet them and get a feel for their personality a little bit, and really doesn't really change where we have them in our order.
Steve, with your first pick, is there any particular emphasis you put on, say, size or speed or skill or anything, any of those traits that you value more than the other?
Not at that particular pick. All those things you mentioned, every player has a combination of all those attributes and or characteristics, and I wouldn't really emphasize more so one over the other. It's ultimately they have to have some degree of all those things, and ultimately we take who we think is the best prospect.
Steve, after the first 2 picks, how unpredictable is this draft 3 on?
Well, I think it's after from 3 to 12, 15, guys can go a lot of different orders. That's the way I see it, but I could be way off from someone else's assessment of it, or we could be way off from another club's assessment of it.
Steve, can you have a draft philosophy? As long as professional leagues have had drafts, it always comes down to you draft for need or the best player available, or is it such a fluid situation because you can't control what the other 30 teams are doing?
Our philosophy is we need the best player available.
Period.
Yeah.
So,
So it's a need and the best player.
all right, so let me follow up with this then. If you do it that way, do you agree with most of the pundits are saying that this is a very top-heavy draft with forwards, not so much on defense.
There'd be more defensemen probably in the, you take all the draft lists, whatever order they're in. Right now, there's probably more forwards and defensemen in anybody's list. What order they're in, I don't know.
What have you had to do?
Conversations at this point with teams that are interested in maybe trading up or back? For
Nothing at this point, yeah.
What's the last month and a half been like for you here, getting accustomed to this new role and getting back into this organization?
It's been very busy. I find myself busy every day. I'm not sure exactly what I'm accomplishing each day, but it's been busy. And that's how I feel at the end of every day.
I'm sure, though, you feel prepared, though, going into this draft and heading into free agency.
I think so. Yeah, again, there's a lot of things going on. I'm trying to just get to know a lot of people. You're trying to get organized for the draft. You have amateur scouting meetings. You have pro scouting meetings this week. Went to the combine for a week, spent a week in Europe. There's a lot going on, and so with the focus really on the draft, and then the second priority would be getting prepared for July 1. And then you have all your staffing issues isn't the right word, but get things in order. It just takes time. So we're kind of chipping away at it all, and every day you feel, certainly for the draft, we're going to be very prepared, and we're going to be very prepared for July 1. I'm not too worried about that. And chip away at all the other things.
Have you had any time to reach out to current Red Wings or some of the prospects that are already part of the organization, or is that for later? It's all about focusing on the draft at this point.
Had a chance before the players left Grand Rapids at the end of their season to go and meet a few of the young players there. I've talked to a couple of the current Red Wings, but my intention will be really probably after July 1 to get a hold of. Ideally, I would have done it sooner. I just kind of the hours you run out of time during the day, and so sooner than later, I intend to just touch base with all the players. Yes, but to this point, it's other things are just tied up all the time.
There are some pretty good goaltenders available too. Could you see yourself picking one, I don't know, maybe late in the second, or one of your, or third, or, maybe a little bit higher than normal, or,
Potentially.
or how do you assess your goaltending depth? I know Philip Larson is,
Yeah, again, off the top of my head, Philip Larson coming from Denver to play in Grand Rapids. Eliasson is young Swede. I'm familiar with him because when I was in Tampa, had our eye on him as well. He's going into Denver, I believe. A couple more goalies over in Europe. We have several prospects that Red Wings have acquired through the draft. Some goaltenders. We're hoping that they evolve into NHLers at some point. So time will tell on that. Whether we use a pick on a goaltender or not, I couldn't definitively say, but certainly there are some guys in the draft that we have some interest in.
Steve, you mentioned, what have you thought about the depth in your organization? Do you like the pool of prospects in your organization?
Well, the team, would be the last two drafts has really had a lot of picks, and they're all encouraging at this point. Getting them from the draft to the NHL is even for first-round picks, there's not a guarantee, but I'm excited. Philip Hronek is one who played in the NHL last year, who did very well at the World Championships. He's coming along. You look, this year, just trying to go off the top of my head, Veleno will play, come and turn pro this year. Obviously with Zadina and Rasmussen coming, there are kids coming, and McIsaac will play another year at junior. Got a couple of Swedish kids that look promising. So there are a lot of kids, and I'm hopeful the ones we expect to make it. And then what would really expedite the process would be a couple of the kids that you're hoping that really take a step forward. But we certainly have a lot of youngsters coming, and we're hoping that we run a good program and they make it to the NHL. But there certainly are a lot of young kids, and that gives you more chances.
Last time you spoke publicly, Ken Holland was sitting next to you. What has it been like seeing him go, and how surprised were you to see him depart?
Well, as he was going through the process and having conversations with him, we went over to Sweden. We talked, it one of the people I'm closest with in the game, so we talk a lot. And, going through the process, I understood what he was thinking. And so ultimately, when he did take the job at Edmonton, I wasn't surprised. I said, Ken's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of passion. He loves the job, as you would all know. And so I wasn't surprised that he elected to become a GM again.
When was the first inkling you thought that he may leave? Throughout the process of courting you, or after you got the
No,
gig?
no, it was, I really wasn't sure up, the day that they announced that, he called me and told me he was taking the job. I really wasn't sure what he was going to do. I wasn't surprised that he did take it, but, because I know it was a hard decision. He's been in this organization a long time. So until he actually told me, I really wasn't, for me, it was kind of 50-50, but I do know he had the passion to manage. And I'm going to really miss him here. He's a valuable, he's had a huge influence on my career, playing and post-playing career, and a great resource for me. So I'm going to miss having him here.
I think you had a similar timeline when you took over in Tampa, getting ready for the draft on a short time. What did you learn about the preparation process through that to apply to this one?
More sort of prioritize. Very similar situation, timeline. So having to go through it a second time, you're just a little bit better prepared. You kind of know what to expect and able to prioritize a little better.
If you Steve, draft table in Vancouver, is that you or is that Tyler? How do you kind of land it on that?
I tend to be a part of it. These guys have done the scouting staff led by Tyler has been doing the work all year. I intend to be a part of it. But as the draft goes on, you have to really rely on the scouts. This is what they're paid to do.
Have you talked to your unrestricteds, Cronwall, Vanek, Witkowski, about whether you're interested in re-signing them? Have you had that conversation? Have you made any decisions?
I haven't talked to Thomas Vanek. I have been in contact with both Nick and Luke.
Have you decided?
I've been in contact with him.
Has Nick indicated to you whether he wants to play another year?
Pardon me?
Has Nicholas indicated?
I've had some discussions. I think, again, I think we talked about it last week, maybe. He can take as much time as he wants. And
So you don't need to know by July 1st?
no, I don't need to know. No, I'm fine either way. So.
Hey,
Steve, speaking of July.
Sounds like you
Oh,
guys
absolutely.
want
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, if he wanted to play, absolutely.
Speaking of July 1st, you mentioned a couple times, do you envision you guys being pretty active in free agency? Too early to tell? I mean, obviously you have money to spend.
We have spots on the roster available. How I would look, before doing it through trade, I would look at free agency to fill those roster spots. We also do want to have some opportunity for our younger players to fill those spots, but we will look at free agency. But I'm not going to sign a free agent just to sign a free agent. It's got to, the player has to fit what we're trying to do. The contract, the term of the contract, and the value of the contract have to fit. So I'm not ruling, I can't tell you how active we're going to be, but we're certainly going to reach out to players and agents of guys we think could fit into what we're doing.
Do you expect this to be
Today, I would say likely not.
Do you expect it to be a summer that we see some offer sheets signed? And what's your stance on that?
Honestly, I really don't know. I don't know what other teams are thinking. I know there's a lot of talk within the media. I really have no idea. To be honest with you, the position that we're in today, I don't say I definitely wouldn't consider it, but it's unlikely.
Do the Blues kind of give you some optimism that you can change this, turn this around quickly?
Well, I think they won the Stanley Cup last night. I don't think they won the Stanley Cup in what they did in the last year. It's been what they've been doing for a long time. If you look at their roster, Alex Pietrangelo he's been in the league, what, 9-10 years? He's, the third overall pick. Tarasenko was drafted 10 years ago. Those are two of their best players. Jaden Schwartz was drafted 10 years ago. There's been a lot of moves along the way. It's taken time for them to get there. They've been to the semifinals a couple of times, so it's taken time for them to get there. So if you're insinuating that, hey, they did this since January the 3rd, it's been a long process. So, but Doug Armstrong did a fantastic job in the last 12 to 18 months. He's made some critical decisions, made a couple of trades, signed some free agents, and all these, and you know, made a coaching change, and all those moves look outstanding today because these were all vital decisions that played a key part in them winning the cup. So I guess to answer your question, it takes time.
Steve, I want to ask you about the guy you signed, Oliver Caskey. Do you foresee him? I know Jeff Blashill looked at him and was pretty impressed with what he was doing at the Worlds as far as running a power play. Is he definitely in the mix?
He's definitely in the mix.
So he has can you assess him at all? Have you seen much of him? Or can you tell us anything about him?
Yeah, he's got a good shot. I watched him play at the Worlds. He's getting, based on what we see at the Worlds, I mean, Yuri has watched him, I think, for 2 years and spent a lot of time. He is a candidate to play on our team. He's a very good power play guy, has an excellent shot, real good hockey sense. Can he adjust to playing on a smaller ice surface? Did that in college. So we're optimistic that he can, you know, he's going to get a good opportunity. We're optimistic he can play in the NHL this year, and we're going to give him a good opportunity to be amongst the 6D on opening night.
You know,
Hey,
you-
Steve, I know you've downplayed expectations a couple of different times, but do you have in your mind, if all goes well and there are no injuries and you guys get a couple of breaks, do you have in your mind like maybe what a ceiling for this team could be? And would that be the playoffs or?
This coming season?
Yeah.
I don't have a ceiling. I'm not going to make any predictions at all to you. I have an idea of what I want to do behind the scenes. What the team eventually is able to accomplish by the end of the season, we will see, but I'm not going to give you a prediction on anything.
Do you like the competition, it seems like amongst the young prospects up front? I mean, Sedina, Rasmussen, Hirose, Svechnikov, I mean, you know, missed all of last season, just coming into camp and battling for jobs there.
Well, like they're all part of the Red Wing organization, and the perception, or what I want them to do, the attitude is, we're all trying to be a part of getting the Red Wings back in the Stanley Cups and getting, you know, becoming a good team. I want them to all to push each other. They're all in it together. Are they competing for jobs? I don't necessarily look at it that way. I want them to push each other, and I'll be a part of, you know, making this a good hockey team. So, but I think that the competition is good. Nobody's getting handed a position on the Red Wings. Nobody. I don't care if you're a first-round pick or a free agent signing. You got to earn your spot, and if players have that attitude, they come in and they will work hard and they will push themselves. And the most competitive kids, whether they're on the team at the start of the season or not, is in big picture, we want them competing for spots because the most competitive kids are going to make our team better.
Your move back here was so anticipated for so long, and you told us how busy you've been. So I noticed in your schedule you haven't exactly done like 16 different autograph signings since you've come back. But on a personal level, what has it been like walking the streets or bumping into people as they see you now returning as a guy running the Red Wings?
Don't really. I've been around Detroit a lot for the last 10 years, you know. People that have seen me a lot, they're over it. And most people that haven't seen me don't really recognize me anymore. So I've been around. The odd person, they're, you know, happy welcoming me back, but hasn't really been that much different really from 2 months ago.
Besides Verbeek, having hired him, do you anticipate any other changes to your front office or no?
I don't want to rule it out, but I don't have any specific, like, will there be change? Yes. To what extent? I can't say definitively. Like, I don't want to change just to change. There's good people here. I want to make sure things are running the way I want them to run and have the right people in place to do that. So how much I really can't predict at this point. And, right now I'm focused on the draft in July 1, and there's some things that need to be answered or positions that need to be settled, and whether that's with people that are in place or new people, that will be determined, I guess, over the summer and really over the course of next season as well.
When you're picking sixth versus some more later round picks in Tampa, like how does that change your approach to that first round pick?
Well, you know, the earlier in the draft you're picking, I guess you can narrow the pool of players that are going to be available down, and focus on those. You get later in the draft, and you pick 27th or 26th maybe, it's a little bit more uncertainty, at least right now, even leading into the first round, because you don't really know who's going to be there. So you have to watch a wider group of players to be prepared at that pick. So for the sixth, you can kind of narrow down that group, and then you're thinking our next pick's 35. In between there, you kind of, it's a bit of an educated guess. These players are going to be gone when we're picking at 35, so we can focus on this pool. I don't know if I answered your question.
I mean, are you
but
pretty confident who's going to be there at 6 as far as like a 3-4 player pool? If you guys have a locked-in idea of who might be there?
I would say I got a kind of maybe a group of 6 or 7, because as we spoke about earlier, pretty certain 2 players are going to be gone, 1, 2. Which order? Pretty certain, but I don't know, and it's no point in us worrying about it. From that 3rd pick through the 12th to the 15th pick, you ask all 30 teams, it could be a very different, or 31 teams, it could be a very different order. So, there's a group there that we think is our number 6 is going to come out of. We'll be excited about any of those kids.
Even
Steve, are
if
people
Byram-
calling it like trade talk in general and stuff? You said there hasn't been much talk about the six, but-
We've been, this week I've been with our pro scouts here. Every team has done them at a different stage of the off-season. Some did them early, some will do them even later. We just finished this week, so I have had, so you start to work the phone, so to speak, and find out what everybody's trying to do. Mostly everyone's kind of focused on the draft, but you do kind of start to prepare a little bit, and just check in with every team to see if there's any fit for anything, and just kind of halfway through that process.
Even if, I think a lot of teams have Byram and Turcotte gone by 6. You got to feel like, with Seegers, Cousins-Dag, some of those guys are going to be available. You're going to get a really good prospect.
We think we're going to get a good prospect, yes.
Thank you.